Welcome to the Uncensored Self Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gillen, and this is a space where women who value achievement, success, accomplishment, and wealth, but also crave happiness, love, joy, and deep fulfillment come to remember that we get to have both. Not by doing more, but by being more of who we truly are. In this show, we explore identity, energy, alignment, and embodiment because you didn't come here to follow someone else's rules. You came to right your own. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Uncensored Self Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gillen, and today I have somewhat of a vulnerable and deep conversation. And because the question I have for you is, are you addicted to money? Are you addicted to money? So I want to say the things I need to say from a disclaimer perspective. First and foremost, trigger warning, right? We're going to talk about addictions. I'm not going to talk about drugs and alcohol, but in the form of, so if that's something that triggers you, be responsible with this episode. And also, I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a doctor in any capacity. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. But the reason why I am telling you this story is because I realized, or I'm asking you this question is because I realized that is what was going on with me. When it felt like no matter how much money I made, it was never enough, that I was addicted. And I looked up the definition of addiction because you guys know I'm a weirdo and I love to do that. And the Merriam-Webster definition of addiction is exhibiting a compulsive, chronic, physiological, or psychological need for a habit-forming substance, behavior, or activity. So compulsive, yes, very much, right? Thinking about it all the time, right? Chronic, yes. Physiological, feeling it in my body. When the money was good, my body was chill, right? But money conversations, I could feel my shoulders and my ears, right? Like getting into client negotiations, my heart would beat faster, right? And then this psychological need. So yes, money was what I thought about all of the time, and to the point where it became unhealthy, where it was not serving me because it was compulsive and it was chronic and I felt like I couldn't stop and it felt like there was never enough. So this episode is very much rooted in my story, because this work exists, honestly, because of my own relationship with money. I don't create the things I create because I mastered money, right? I create the things I create because money nearly wrecked my life, right? And I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize that was happening. So I really want to tell you the story. I've shared my story here on the podcast very open and honestly, but through the lens of money, because I think there's probably, if you're resonating with this story and you're like, hey, am I addicted to money? I think you're going to recognize yourself in parts of the story. So I grew up in a upper middle class family in a small town in Kansas, right? So my parents were East Coast transplants. Are from Jersey City. And so I grew up with a little bit of a different money story than most kids in small towns in Kansas, right? But my dad was blue collar, union job, right? It was actually his union job that moved him from Jersey City to Kansas City. At the time, they were opening a plant here. He worked on the dock, right? My mom didn't have a college education, right? She worked part-time when we were young, full-time as we were older. She had a good career, but it was made very clear to her that because she did not have a degree, there was going to be a cap on her income and how far she could go, right? I very much grew up with the belief system of like, there's the man and then there's us, right? That's the blue collar union dad, right? Like, damn the man. Like somebody was taking advantage of us as working class people, whether it was rich people, successful people, the people who own the company, they were taking advantage of us, right? And that's an important part of our money story. We'll talk about that as well, right? Money wasn't abundant, but we weren't poor, right? So nothing was ever a no. My parents very rarely, God bless them, never told me no. It was a will work harder for it. Right? It wasn't a no. It's just, well, dad's going to have to pick up an extra shift, right? Dad's going to have to work a little bit more to make sure we have that money. You want to play on that competitive volleyball team? Totally, right? You want those jeans and not the jeans I want to buy you. You better go get a job, right? It was, to me, hard work equals success. So I never grew up with the belief system that I couldn't make money or that money wasn't for me. It was just something I had to work really, really hard for. I learned that money was something you earned through effort and sacrifice. And there was somebody somewhere who didn't want you to have a lot of it or were maybe taking advantage of you with it, right? So this really weird thing of, I want this thing, but clearly we don't think highly of people who have that thing. So I've got this effort and hard work and struggle story, but then also inherently people with a lot of money are taking advantage of you and I, right? So that's my money story. Why do I tell you this? I tell you this because none of our money beliefs are ours unless you have done this work. Let me say that for you again. None of our money beliefs are ours unless you have done this work. And the reason that is true is because when you came out as a baby, you didn't have any feelings about money. That was not what you were concerned about, right? It was what you heard. It was what you grew up around. It was the conversation in your home, maybe industries that you've been around, parts of the country, parts of the world that you're raised in are very different conversations about money, right? Your money beliefs were given to you. And in some ways, maybe for some of you, it serves you, but for some of you, myself included, it did not serve me. A lot of those beliefs, the belief that I could have it and I could make it definitely served me, right? But the belief that I had to suffer and sacrifice, and if I had a lot of it, I probably wouldn't be a very good person, was not mine and not serving me in any capacity. Because if you really want to get down to brass tacks, and the reason why I'm so obsessed with taking money off the pedestal, that's why I've got this program coming out called Money Detox, because we have given all our power to a completely made up system. Somebody just said this dollar says 1, so it's worth, this piece of paper is worth 1, and this piece of paper is worth 5, and this piece of paper is worth 100, and this piece of paper is worth 1,000, and we all just went along with it. And then we also went along in agreement of, well, those shoes are worth this, and that purse is worth this, and that house is worth this, and this career and education is worth this. It's a made-up system that only works because we believe in it. Because at the end of the day, it's numbers on a screen, right? Nowadays, money is numbers on a screen. You can't even touch it, feel it, taste it. It's a system that we were sold. And the reason why this is important is because it's a made up system, and you have a set of beliefs that aren't yours, which means you can change your beliefs. A belief is just a thought you've thought so many times that you think that it's true. And so you were just programmed because you didn't know any different, and now you can make a different choice. Now you can absolutely positively make a different choice and change your belief systems and change your relationship with money, right? So moving on from here, I'm kind of explaining this, and it's going to just kind of come and go intuitively. So I went to school on a full ride scholarship. I was a D1 athlete. I played volleyball. Because the story was, if you want out of this small town in Kansas, which I very badly did, my parents didn't have enough money. They had enough money to give me the things, but they couldn't pay for college. So a scholarship was what I needed. And so that's what I did, right? And then I go on in my sophomore season to quit playing volleyball, right? So I played my freshman season. So the woman who recruited me actually didn't wind up coaching me. She wound up moving, and I wound up playing for a woman who I probably wouldn't have chosen as my coach. We just were not a really good match. So this thing that I used to love so much, used to bring me so much joy, is not doing that anymore. So my sophomore season, I just said, fuck it. And I walked out. And my mother gave me 2 choices, right? She said, you can come home. Right? There's a D2 school up the street. They will give you a scholarship. You can go play ball. Or you can find the student loan office. And to me, I went to the student loan office because going home meant failure. I had to admit that I left my small town in Kansas. I made it, I got my D1 scholarship. I moved to New York. I'm not coming home with my tail between my legs. So I go on to saddle myself with $50,000 worth of debt for a communications degree from a private college in Poughkeepsie, New York, right? But now that I'm no longer a scholarship athlete, I have to get a job. And I had jobs growing up. So I started waiting tables. I didn't have a problem with that. But again, money became the solution to everything. I had to make enough money to pay off these loans because I chose to stay here because I couldn't go home with my tail between my legs, right? If we just had more money, there wouldn't be a problem, right? I wouldn't have to get all this different stuff. I'm sure you're seeing this. I'm sure you're feeling this in some ways. So I go on to graduate college. I moved from New York to Florida with a girlfriend of mine. I learned very quickly. I interned at a PR firm in Manhattan my last year of college, and it just wasn't a fit. I was like, I don't want to live in a shoebox. It was too busy. It was too loud. So I moved to Florida with a girlfriend of mine. I knew I wanted to be somewhere warm. I was sick of the winter. And I got my first sales job. I was actually working for Lou Pearlman. I don't know if you guys know. Lou Pearlman is founded the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. Actually, when I was Transcontinental Records, discovered it was a Ponzi scheme. He went to prison, and I honestly think he's dead. But I worked for a company called Fashion Rock, and we were selling industry events to people who wanted to be in the industry. And on my very first day at this job, I didn't even know what I was doing. I just had a conversation with these people. They said, yes, we're going to come to the event. And somebody handed me $150 cash. Right? And that felt so life-changing to me because I was also going to get paid commission on that deal, right? I was also getting a salary. And I just came to work this morning and walked out with $150 for having a conversation with these people. It felt, again, ba-boom. See, it was right. Money solves all the problems. I remember, I can feel it in my body when I talk to you about it, right? And that moment honestly changed the trajectory of my life, right? Sales became my identity. So I left that sales job. Once we realized that, Lou Pearlman was a criminal, he got into radio. It only took 9 months, guys. This was not a long part of my career. Started working in radio. I started as a sales assistant making $10 an hour, knowing that I wanted to get into sales. And radio sales is a 100% commission job. But I was fortunate enough to land on an all-woman sales team, which was so much fun. And it was so much fun at that time. But they were all significantly older, right? They all drove nice cars. I remember seeing multi-million-dollar advertising contracts just laying out on people's desks. And I'm like, this is bananas. My little, Paola, Kansas brain couldn't imagine that somebody was buying $5 million worth of advertising, right? And that this person sitting next to me was going to get paid a percentage of that, right? We would go to Ruth's Chris for a happy hour and they were all driving their Mercedes. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this is what success looks like. It looks like Mercedes and expensive places and all of that. And I don't know any different. So I'm like, cool. But I also assumed that because they had money and they could afford all this stuff, their life must be good. Because I'm going back to my programming where it's like, we weren't going to fancy restaurants, right? Or, my parents drove normal cars, all of those things. So again, this is just continuing to structure my narrative around money and the story around money, which ultimately leads to the addiction part, right? Well, here's what happens, and I think a lot of you will relate to this part of the story, is that my career started to grow, right? And as I climbed the ladder, as I got more and more successful, as I got out of being an individual contributor into sales enablement, right? It was supposed to feel better, right? Isn't that what you thought? As you got more jobs and more money and more responsibility and things like that, that it would be more fun and that you would like it more, but instead it just felt heavier, right? More responsibility, more income, more pressure to repeat it, more people watching you, more expectation, higher stakes if you fuck up. So now you're like, oh, well, I've got the money. I'm making the money. I got the job that I said that I wanted, but I feel all of this pressure all the time and it still feels like it's not enough money. And so at this point in time, I'm like, cool, I'll just make more, right? So again, I'm in sales leadership. I'm traveling and training sales teams. I've got a 6-figure salary, a 6-figure in bonus. I've just built my house, like literally picked out all the fixtures in my house. I just have a baby. I'm 34 years old and I'm like, what the fuck? Why doesn't this feel different? Why doesn't this feel better? Why is this not enough? Why is it not enough money? Right? So then I leave my corporate job and I become an entrepreneur. And at the time, I didn't want to make millions. I didn't even know millions were available. All I wanted to replace my corporate salary, right? $200,000 a year, easy peasy, no problem, right? But now the stakes are higher. The stakes are even higher at this point in the game because now there is no employer paying my salary. There's nobody paying for benefits. There's nobody telling me what to do. There's nobody supplying a product. And now I've got to create it all on my own, which creates even more pressure. But what's also happening is I'm watching people. So I went from being in a room when I was young, right, with women being wildly successful and all of that. But again, we're talking, in my mind, wildly successful. They're probably making a couple $100,000 a year. Well, we go from like me thinking $250,000 to $300,000 a year would be like unfucking believable to now it's millions. Cause now I'm playing in a different game. I'm in different rooms. I'm in coaching programs. My coach is making, I think $3 million a year, which is just bananas to me, making videos on the internet. Like, say what? Like it blew my mind that this was a thing. Like again, and the reason I share this with you is because there might be that moment where you went all of a sudden from like money isn't for people like me, because right, damn the man, to like, ooh, is this available for me? Is this me? Right. And so, like I said, I thought I just needed enough. But then I was like, but what about more than enough? Like, what would that look like? And that was kind of introduced, like, so to give you context time-wise, now we're in like 2018, 2019, 2020. First year of my business, I still have my full-time job up until June, but then I think the business does $118,000 a year. And then the business goes on to do 520 in 2020. So 2019, 120, 520 in 2019. 2021 is a $1.2 million year between my business and then the business I'd started with a partnership, right? And this is actually when the wheels start to fall off, right? So far you can hear the trajectory of the story that everything is good, right? Like there's good things happening in my life as I climb this ladder. I'm starting to feel the dissatisfaction on the inside, right? But my life is inherently good. I'm growing at this point in time. Well, the $1.2 million year is when the wheels fell off. I am no longer growing. My business partnership implodes in a massive legal battle, right? I wake up one day to realize that I have gained 60 pounds. My marriage is falling apart. I have no friends who are not, business related in some way, shape, or form, because who the fuck has time for that? I realize I'm never present with my children. I'm physically in the room, but I'm not paying attention because I'm either on my phone or thinking about work, right? And I feel like I just became a robot. Like I was efficient, but I was cold and I was depleted and I was empty. So I made a fuck ton of money and became a shell of a human because my nervous system couldn't handle it, because my identity couldn't handle it, because I was addicted to something outside of me to make me feel good. But that's not money's job. That's not money's job, is not to make us feel good. So I was letting something outside of me dictate how I feel. I gave a job to money and said, if money performs this way, I'm good. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I gave all my power away, chips in on money. Right? That's what it was. So here's what happens. As this $1.2 million year, my ego kicks in. Okay. My ego kicks in and says, if I did it once, I can do it again. So, and I'm still living and investing and paying for things like I'm making $1.2 million a year, right? And let's be clear, I wasn't making $1.2 million a year. I was probably making $25,000, $30,000 a month at that time is what I'm taking out of the business, right? So, but I've made investments. I've invested in masterminds. I've got employees. I've got software, right? Like I've got a really high ticket private coach. We've made some really big investments in marketing and things like that. So the business isn't making 1.2 million, but I'm still holding on to these investments because my egos were like, no, just give me a minute. Like I can get this together. I'd made all these commitments based on my old income. But there was this burn rate mismatch, right? So I go from 1.2 million to turning around and having a $350,000 a year, which objectively is still a fuck ton of money. Remember, I told you at the beginning of my career, $300,000 a year was like, fuck you money. But it felt like complete and total failure, right? I was a cliche. I was a fraud. I was a loser. Like what the actual fuck, right? So I am letting money, this made up substance with this made up system that we have all bought into, make me feel like a loser. And so I just continue to spiral. So I told you about my business divorce. Now I go through an actual divorce. Ultimately, through my divorce, I realize that bankruptcy is the best way to negotiate that, keep my house, do the things that we need to do to make that work for the two of us, right? And what I realized is I started telling people, the people you have to call and tell when this is going on, your accountant, your lawyer, right? You got to get a real estate appraisal, all these things. But everybody was super calm about it. When I was like, well, this is happening, every single one of them was like, oh, we see this all the time. Like we see this all the time. We see this with successful people. We see this with bankruptcy and divorce go hand in hand all the time. Like it was no big deal. Right. And it was kind of this light bulb moment for me where this thing that I was making feel like I was horrible, right? Like I was the biggest loser on the planet. I had let everybody down. I was, going to have to go home with my tail between my, like the feelings that I felt, the shame that I felt around this, and everyone else is like, yeah, this happens all the time. I'm like, what? This is happening everywhere. Why is nobody talking about this? Why does nobody ever talk about these things? And that's actually why I talk about these things. Am I uncomfortable? Of fucking course. Right. But can we stop fucking pretending that we actually know what's going on in people's lives? Because I also want to tell you, well, all this is happening in my life. Nobody on the outside knows this. I'm still running a business. I still have 2 full-time employees. Like nobody knows that these things are happening behind the scenes. But I was instantly able to reframe that successful people fall all the time. They fail all the time because we leverage ourselves. We bet on ourselves. And it was actually my ex-husband who kind of like, while we were negotiating our divorce, I remember we're sitting in my kitchen. We're talking through everything and I'm horrified that this is happening. And I think that bankruptcy is the best way to do this. And I'm crying. And he's like, Ryan, the only thing you did wrong was bet on yourself. Excuse me? Say what? He was like, no, you bet on yourself. Like you went all in on a dream of your own. And most people will never do that. And Ryan, you had good reason to bet on yourself because you have a winning record. You made one bad bet, because I often say that it was the big event that I hosted back in 2022. I had booked out a Marriott and committed to like a $30,000 food and beverage minimum and a hotel block and all these things, and didn't sell out the event. And that was kind of the straw that had broke the camel's back, right? Like I had recovered from all those big investments I was making. I got my expenses under control, but I was still having a hard time with the extra money to pay off the debt. Well, then this happens and it just tips the domino. And so in my mind, like that was the thing. And he was like, Ryan, it was one bad bet. You've made millions of good bets on yourself and you made one bad bet. And people do, like, this is happening all of the time. People winning and losing, money coming in, money losing. Like I thought it was the end. I thought it was proof that I was a loser, but it was just part of the energetics, right? So, but what I also realized, because when you hit rock bottom, you have to reevaluate your relationship with money. And I realized 2 things. One, that what I needed and what I wanted were 2 different things. Because in this, I'm realizing, and I think I shared this a couple weeks ago on the podcast, like I actually need very little in life, like need, right? I desire a lot. But that was very helpful because a lot of my desires were in the need column, right? Like I need to drive this kind of car. I need it to look this way. No, you don't need any of that. You want that. What you need is to keep people fed and, the lights on and to have some fucking fun, right? So that's the first thing I realized. And the second thing I realized that it wasn't ambition, it was addiction. Right? It wasn't ambition. It wasn't ambition. It was an addiction to, I just need to get this thing outside of me to perform in a certain way because I thought money would fix everything. That's why I kept betting bigger and betting bigger and betting bigger. Talk about addiction, right? Just a little more, just spend a little more money, right? Just invest in one more thing, right? I thought money would fix everything. I'll take care of my marriage later. I'll take care of my body later. I'll be present for the kids later. But here's what I realized. If you need something outside of yourself to regulate your nervous system and you cannot be okay without it, it is an addiction. If you need something, and I'm not talking about I'm not talking about if you have ADHD or, or anything along those lines and you're taking medication to help with those things. I'm talking about if you need your spouse to behave a certain way for you to be okay, it's an addiction. If it's compulsion, if you're thinking about it all the time, if you need the scale to say a certain number for you to be okay, it's an addiction, right? It's an addiction because remember, the definition of addiction is compulsive, chronic, physiological, or psychological need. It becomes a need. I'm not okay without it. And I feel not okay. And it starts to diminish my mental health. And it starts to diminish the way that I feel. And it invades my thoughts all of the time. It is an addiction. It is an addiction. And so I was using money to regulate myself. And so and of course, because universal law works all of the time, the problem just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm using money to regulate myself and I'm not doing the energy work at this point in time. And so I'm a mess. Right. But even after all of this happened, the addiction didn't disappear. Like my income has stabilized at this point in time. We're back in like 2023-ish is when it starts to stabilize, come back to like my corporate level safety, all of that. But I notice I'm still obsessing. I'm still obsessing. So the money situation is different. The bills, there's everything is what it is. Everything is fine. All the bills are paid. Again, I'm at the level where it was, where I'm able to do the things I want to do, not rolling around in it yet, but certainly not hurting for it. Again, need versus desire at this point in time. But I notice I'm still obsessing over money because why would anybody hire me as a coach if I wasn't making a lot of money, right? Like I teach intentional reality creation. I teach the energy game. Why don't you have millions? And that's ridiculous because I don't teach you how to make money. I'm not sitting here promising I'm going to teach you how to make money. Like that's not my promise. That's not the work I do with my clients. The work I do with my clients is figure out how do we detach our worthiness from our fucking career? How do we detach our identity from, how much money is in our bank account? That has nothing to do with money because honestly, money is a problem. But I was saying, well, because I haven't achieved A, B, C, X, Y, Z, I'm not good enough to do X, Y, Z. And that's fucking bullshit. But that's how deep I was in it. So there came a moment where I was like, something's got to go. Something's got to go or something's got to change. Like I have all of this stuff. And again, I'm feeling somewhat subtly, and we're talking like end of 2023 at this point, coming into 2024, where I'm realizing that it's the obsession with money. It's the obsession with it. It's thinking about it all of the time, wanting it all the time, visualizing it all the time, constantly thinking about the vacation that I want to take. And again, I'm almost doing this in a positive way at the time. I'm just realizing this is coming through very intuitively. Like even when I was thinking about, oh my God, and we're going to go on this vacation, and we're going to go on this vacation, thinking that I was manifesting money, right? I was giving my energy to these vacations that I wanted to go on in order to be an energetic match to those vacations. But I was still thinking about them as like, well, someday I'll have enough money to go on that vacation. When I get the business here, we'll have enough money to go on that vacation. So even though I'm visualizing the thing, trying to make positive, that wasn't happening at all. Right? Because I was still constantly visualizing a life with more money as if the life that I currently had was not enough. The obsession blocks the reception. The only way that more money flows in is when I stop needing it to be okay, when every single visualization isn't about a life that looks dramatically different from this one, because this one's not okay. Because if you're constantly trying to call in more money, even from a more positive place, it still implies that where you are right now isn't okay. That is an addiction. It is a compulsion. And so what do we do is what you're thinking right now, right? Is we have to decenter money. We have to bring our focus back inside of us. We have to stop weighing our worthiness against our bank account. Stop telling ourselves that there's going to be a there that we're going to arrive to, and realize that the only motherfucking moment that you have in this life is now. You need to stop needing it to be okay. That's what the 7-day money detox is. It isn't mindset. It isn't manifestation hacks. It's nervous system work. It's identity work. It's detachment. It's learning what safety and ease, like what you actually want. Because quite frankly, most of us are in an abusive relationship with money. We hate it, but we want it. We want it, but we hate that we do. We hate how much control it has over us, but we can't stop. I didn't want more money. I wanted my life back. That's where I got. I don't even fucking care if this thing ever hits $1 million. I just want my life back. I just want to enjoy what I'm doing. I just want to think about something other than money. And that's where money detox came from. And what I've been able to do now is realize that I still do desire a fuck ton of money. That has not changed, but it is no longer my primary focus. Because I tried to say, fuck it, I don't want it, right? Like I did try to do that. Didn't go well, right? No, I desire it. I believe that part of living my life to the fullest and allowing us does mean that there's a free flow of money in my life, absolutely, positively. And I believe that that free flow is available to me all of the time. And I know that I am in a season of breakthrough right now. I can feel it in every ounce of my body as I talk to you right now, right? The whole money thing, because again, I took money off the pedestal. It's not about money. I don't wake up thinking about money anymore. I don't constantly look to my bank account to give me permission to do the things that I want to do. I don't constantly look around the things in my house and think, God, I wish I could afford to replace that. And I wish I could afford to replace that. I stopped thinking, letting money be the filter for everything in my life. I removed the filter. And when I removed the filter, I could see. And I believe in my heart of hearts that this is the work, that this is the point. So if this speaks to you, if any part of this story is like, fuck yeah, no, this is unhealthy, do the 7-day money detox, guys. It's $97. It's $97. You can add on a one-on-one call with me if you want to take it deeper. I know sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable about money. It brings up a lot of emotions because that's that whole physiological thing for us. So if you want to add on a one-on-one to like really go deep with your story, it's only $200. We're going to start on February 9th. I'm going to do it live. So there's 3 live teaching sessions and then 1 live coaching and integration call. So we're going to do it over the course of 7 days. You can go to www.livelifeuncensored.com/money detox. It's linked in the show notes. And you can go there to join us. It breaks down kind of what each one of them, the lessons are. And then there will be coaching. We are using the Slack channel. So between calls and things like that, you're going to have a lot of access. You can ask your questions. All of my current clients get to do this. It's part of their investment with me. So they'll be part of it. It'll be a really great group of people. But I think that this is really groundbreaking work because I wasted decades of my life chasing money and waiting for it to give me permission to be happy, to live my life, to love myself, to feel worthy, to feel good enough. And letting go of that has been really fucking incredible. Yeah, that's what I got. I hope to see you in our money detox, and I'll see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Uncensored Self podcast. If this conversation cracked something open for you, trust that that's the work. And share this episode with a woman in your life who's ready to stop performing and start creating. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, leave a review. It helps this message reach the women who need it most. Remember, you're the creator. The rules are yours. And your uncensored self, she already knows what to do. Keep leading, keep listening, keep becoming.